Good evening to all of you, my dear friends, and some new friends. It feels as if we've been doing this for a lifetime, and it's a special honor for me to be asked to help honor this year's laureates, our very worthy and outstanding laureates of the McNulty Prize. I know exactly how you are feeling tonight, the pride, the perhaps sense of not fully deserving, the recognition of your peers, the elevation into a rather special clan within our global tribe of the Aspen Global Leadership Network. So congratulations to all of you. This is going to be a memorable evening for you, and we expect that as it is done for almost all of us, the prize and the recognition turbocharges your current efforts, which are already worthy of celebrating. Many thanks, of course, to Anne especially and the entire McNulty family for all the investment of heart and soul, and not inconsiderable amount of money, into showcasing some of the best amongst us and encouraging and inspiring others also to step up and do the right thing. We do not always do the right thing, but we strive mightily to do so. So thank you for gathering us together once again. I always look forward to this part of this week's events, one of my favorites, in addition, of course, to the very fine buffet you usually lay out in your lovely home. When Anne sent me a note to ask me to speak tonight, I didn't think twice about it, because it comes naturally for me to want to act as an ambassador for this prize, which I unexpectedly won a number of years ago. Looks like we're now long in the tooth and downhill and picking up speed, but it has been many years of seeing this thing grow to a vital part of our Aspen community and our global network. So thank you, all of you. The world today feels a little unsettled. We can all sense that there is change underfoot, but we do not know exactly what it means. And this feeling of being unsettled, like walking on fishes, I think one of our poets described it, leads us to have a feeling, I think, of dread due to not really knowing what is coming. We know it's going to change. We do not know what replaces it. And this dread, to my thinking, I think is leading us to a place of needless negativity and a seeming lack of belief in our capacity for action that could help lift our world. We've always known, being of sound mind, presumably, that perfection is not what we seek, but progress. And the work of many members of this global network and many more outside these precincts are living proof for us that progress is possible, that change for the good is not just possible, but probable. And I wanted to make sure that I argue in front of you this evening for the next few minutes on the proposition that actually we have many more reasons to be optimistic about the direction of our world than we care to acknowledge. And not acknowledging it then means that we are going to paralyze ourselves and miss all the opportunities that these changes that are occurring in societies present to us. Exit number one, the country of South Africa, where I make my home for most of the year. South Africa presented an extraordinary spectacle to us 30 years ago, almost to the day, when decades and even centuries of racial oppression fell away, more or less peacefully, and an extraordinary leader emerged from the ruins of apartheid to lead the country in a different direction. The world, I think, reacted to South Africa in that way because we suspect that this was the highest expression of how we would like to see ourselves. Those very long, miles-long lines of voters, people, citizens voting for the first time were a source of extraordinary inspiration. But over the course of the next 30 years, especially after the first 15 years, when the country was riding on boundless optimism, it lost its way. Poetry became prose, and not very good prose at that. Vile politicians took over, and ambition began to wane. The result was that a couple of months ago, the voters of South Africa delivered an extraordinary rebuke to the party of Nelson Mandela, which had guided the country for the previous 30 years. And the majority of the electorate, which was as high as about 70%, collapsed to barely 40. The voters sent a very loud message, and what that resulted in is a new coalition government that has now tried to include almost all elements of society to try and figure out a way together to chart a new path. This, to me, is a sense of optimism about the capacity of a society to try to right itself when it's going the wrong way. This capacity demonstrably exists in every country of the world, and especially in these United States, where my fellow citizens lately have begun to turn themselves into prophets of doom, and there was going to be the end of democracy as we know it as of November 6 or 7, or whenever the next election is. I think this is unwarranted, and even if Donald J. Trump becomes yet again the President of the United States, it simply presents more opportunities for us to try to do the right thing. And I think in these changes that are afoot lie the various opportunities for progress that comes as a result of our work, and it's a result of our work together. Exhibit number 2, the country of Rwanda, not that far from South Africa, where 30 years ago I was wading through dead bodies, floating downriver and in banana groves, a country that was left for dead with nearly 1 million people murdered with machetes and guns by those who call them cockroaches. The country of Rwanda today, and I suspect there are a fair number of you who have been there in recent years, who see a country that has arisen. The dead are arising in Rwanda. Rwanda is probably Africa's best governed country today. I think that's probably inarguable. It is true that it is not your classically freest society on earth, but they have prioritized security above all, given their experience, in the same way that South Africa prioritized freedom above all, given their history of dispossession. It wasn't that long ago in the country of India, to which I've been honored to visit every year, more or less for the last 5 years that Manoj has become a star farmer. Everybody thought Narendra Modi was rolling fast towards effectively one-man rule. They were going to get all the majorities and the opposition was going to be wiped out. The voters of India had other thoughts, and they delivered a humbling rebuke to the would-be authoritarian. A few weeks ago in France, we thought the nativist far right was going to roll to victory. again, the voters surprised us by doing something entirely different from what we had all herded ourselves into believing. The world is not going in the wrong direction, but rather people continue to do the work of making their corner of the world better than they found it, even if sometimes we obscure our view of the reality of the progress that is being made. A lot of my Chinese friends have also become despondent in the last couple of years as Xi Jinping became ever more powerful and the cult of personality is beginning to arise, more or less, possibly taking them back to the time of Mao. But we should not forget, even amidst that gloom, that China achieved something that was probably the most remarkable achievement of the modern human era, which is over the period of 30 to 40 years to lift 1 billion people out of extreme poverty. As we all know, extreme poverty equals unfreedom. So in that sense, there are a lot of things that we have been getting right, and there are many challenges that we face that we need to try to overcome. The work of our laureates is a sign of this abiding optimism without which progress is impossible. My father died 16 years ago at the age of 93. He also loved his schnapps and his scotch, so perhaps there is hope for me. He died on July 30, and so this time of year I reflect a little bit about his life and I gain a better understanding of what sort of man he was. He was a very generous man who didn't take things too seriously. And even if he had a misfortune in business or a friend cheated him out of something, he would just say, let it go. We used to think that that was not the proper way to live, but he always sort of managed to find himself getting even better things done in his life. And it seems to me that this faith in the goodness of human beings, despite the evidence, is actually a propellant for the kind of progress that we seek. We were here together last year. A few months later, October 7 happened in the Middle East. All our WhatsApp chat groups blew up. People started yelling at one another. And we almost forgot what our community was about. But if we learn now to not judge one another so harshly, to be a little bit gentler with one another, more understanding, it will be possible for us to collaborate and to make progress and to make things a little bit better. So I give a shout out to my friend who lives in Jerusalem, whose son was on the war front in Gaza, and all I could offer him was to just check in with him from time to time. I knew this boy as a teenager. I went to speak at his high school in Jerusalem in front of 400 students and their parents. And so this is my boy. So I wish him no harm, even though he was driving a tank in Gaza. And I knew that Palestinian children were going to die, possibly, as a result of the role he has to play in the Israeli Defense Force. I do not want Palestinian children to die, but I also do not want any harm to come to my boy. And he is now back home, his father tells me, and I wish for nothing but for us to have an understanding that we can hold things that challenge us and that are even internally contradictory and still try to figure out a way to make things better. So I salute you all on your great achievement and this wonderful ceremony that is beginning. And I invite my friend and sister from another mother, Anne McNulty, to come up to the stage. Thank you.
Thank you, Deli. And thank you especially for those very optimistic words about hope and imagination. And it's surely something we really need to hear right now. You have always been so generous with your support of me, of us, and of this whole community over the years with your writing and your influence, and you're occasionally inviting us to drink wine and think big thoughts.
The wine is not going to drink it.
So good evening. I'm Ann Welsh McNulty, and I want to give a warm welcome to everyone here, especially those of you who are attending the forum for the first time. Now, as many of you know, my children and I created the John P. McNulty Prize out of love and loss when my husband John passed away just after his 53rd birthday. We have been awarding the prize now for over 15 years. And I have to say, it gives us great joy, especially because we could never have imagined that we would be connected directly to so many inspiring leaders and the groundbreaking work that they are doing all around the world. And plus, it gives me the opportunity to talk about John. Now, so my John was the son of Irish immigrants, the first in his family to go to college, and he really was a force of nature. He had this intense curiosity and radical belief in people and what they were capable of. He wanted to go and get to know everyone he met instantly and sometimes insistently. His questions were always grounded in a fierce determination to hear what you wanted to do with your life and to talk out how you were going to do it. He believed you could, and he was very stubborn about making sure that you did it too. And this is what I think we see play out in the work of all of our laureates. These leaders don't assume that they have the solution in hand. They are led by the communities and the individuals that they serve. And that's really what the prize is about recognizing individuals who are spurring communities to develop their own positive and durable change. And one example of this actually is Delhi, who I've known since he upended journalism in Nigeria years ago. Delhi exposed corruption at the highest level and even helped topple an administration. But perhaps his true accomplishment was creating a new generation of ethical journalists who are now working all across Africa. And they're living his values of transparency, integrity, and unwavering thirst for the truth. Now, I'm happy to introduce you tonight to the leaders we are going to honor. Saket, Gloria, Najeen, and John Claude are all incredibly effective at what they're doing. Saket, organizing and advocating for some of America's most vital, but also most vulnerable workers. Gloria, making sure that the communities most affected by pollution and climate change are front and center in creating solutions to those problems. And Najeen and Jean Claude, training a whole generation of new Haitian leaders with the goal of transforming that nation. Of course, but tonight it's not just their leadership that we are honoring, it's also their fierce belief in the people around them, in the communities that they come from. And that's how we, all of us, can create the kind of impact that really will be more than any of us could do on our own. So now I'm happy to say my sons Johnny and Kevin will introduce you to this year's winners, and even more exciting, you'll get to see the beautiful videos that we have made about each of them. So.
Hello, I'm Johnny McNulty. No relation. Just kidding, very relation. At the McNulty Foundation, we have always viewed individual leaders as our unit of change. That's why this prize started with the amazing people in the AGLN fellowships. And we knew, though, that there were even more leaders even more talent and connections to even more communities in the Aspen ecosystem. That's why a few years ago we opened up the prize and our other forms of support like the Catalyst Fund to more Aspen Institute programs to lift up even more diverse leaders and encourage more cross-pollination and collaboration. We also invest in the elements that sustain leaders for the long haul. That includes community, visibility, and of course funding. So we have made a significant new investment in the Aspen Institute with the goal of developing new gatherings and models of seminars where participants' ideas can be accelerated directly into joint action. For example, through the very successful new Fellowship Innovation Fund. There is so much potential energy every time you gather, and now it can become more kinetic. Finally, I would like to thank my colleagues. I generally give these speeches because it saves about 20 seconds of introduction to send up a guy with the same name as the thing. But I am just one of, if you can believe it, 4 core staff at the foundation. And anyone who has worked with us knows how amazing and effective the other 3 are. Our executive director, April Aj, our program director, Nina Sani, and our program associate, Abiola McKinwa. And a shout out to our summer associate, Esther Park. It is a small but mighty team, and I encourage all of you in this room to get to know us, because we would very much like to get to know you and your work and to build those connections. Now my brother Kevin will introduce this year's McNulty Prize winners. For each of them, we will watch a short film that takes us into their worlds, and then we will hear from each of them on stage. Afterwards, they will join Stace Lindsay for a short dialogue. Thank you very much.
Thank you. I am Kevin McNulty, and I have no name-based jokes for you. But what I do have is the great privilege of introducing the 2024 McNulty Prize winners. For helping the workers who rebuild our cities and homes after disasters, in building a new American profession with the safety and dignity they deserve. Saket Soni and Resilience Force. And now, let's take a look at the video.
Every year, we spend between $10 billion and $100 billion on disaster recovery. Tens of thousands of families sometimes spend months waiting to return home. We're going to need a 1 million-strong workforce to make every home in America resilient. The problem is that the workforce we have is mistreated, and we need far more workers than we have.
Y simplemente que se nos respetan los derechos como cualquier ser humano se merece.
We're transforming the way the United States does recovery. I arrived in the United States when I was 19. After Hurricane Katrina, I got an anonymous phone call that led me to uncover one of the largest human trafficking schemes in modern US history. That's how I was introduced to the world of low-wage labor. I would follow workers from storm to storm, and that's what led us to start Resilience Force.
Hola, mi amor, ¿cómo estás? Emigré aproximadamente cuando tenía 16 años de edad. Yo vine buscando una mejor vida, un mejor sueño.
How are the conditions when you work a hurricane?
You sleep in the car.
These workers who have always been seen as unskilled are in fact incredibly skilled.
Yo tengo aproximadamente unas 3,000 casas, creo 3,000 a 4,000 casas. Más que todo, hemos hecho el trabajo y muchas veces no se nos han pagado. Hola Cindy, ¿cómo
Hola,
está?
Josué, buenos días,
Bienvenida,
¿cómo
¿lista
está?
para roofing?
Lista.
We're training them on safety, we're certifying them as skilled, and then we're matching them so that companies have loyal, professional, and vetted workers.
Me siento con confianza. Si algún día llego a estar en problemas, tengo un respaldo. Quiero trabajar siempre duro para el día de mañana mi hija tenga para ir a la universidad.
Since our founding, we've achieved some really significant wins. We've attached labor standards to almost $400 million in contracts. We've protected workers from exploitation and abuse, winning them health and safety protections. We've instituted floor wages in this industry. The most important thing, though, is the creation of a new worker community. So we're going to use my mother's technique again.
Okay.
Disasters are tragic, and there are no silver linings, but they're also an opening for people to build friendships across lines of difference. Those are the kinds of bonds we need in America.
All right, folks, dinner is served.
Wherever you live, you could have a disaster come day after tomorrow. We're getting counties, companies, homeowners, all to get together and invest in permanent workforces that can work year-round. Our vision is a new American profession. We're building the skilled, scaled, professional workforce we're going to need across every community in every state in America.
Hi, everyone. Wow, what a beautiful room. This is incredible. What you just saw high up on that hot rooftop in Louisiana is one man, Josué, teaching one woman, Cindy, on how to repair a home after a hurricane. That training, that relationship, and thousands like it are the seeds of something much bigger we're building, a 1 million-strong workforce to repair every home in America after hurricanes, floods, and fires, and to make communities resilient for the climate change and disasters to come. Our big idea is a new American profession. It's called the Certified Climate Resilience Technician, and it's a group of people who not only have skills and practice, but also the same kind of vocation, the same dedication to their work that nurses and firefighters have. We're building this workforce with a host of unlikely bedfellows, companies and their investors and owners, homeowners of renters, elected officials of every political stripe, because resilience is a rising need. Everyone understands this now. From every elected official, every homeowner, every renter, and all of the construction companies know we need this workforce. And we as a nation are spending hundreds of billions of dollars a year making our communities resilient. But we don't have one thing to do it. We don't have the workers we need. So that's the big idea. That's what we're building. Workers, and not just immigrant workers, but the formerly incarcerated, rural and urban workers, Black, white, Asian American, Native American, and other workers are all getting trained to rebuild where they are and make infrastructure resilient where they live. And they're building one more thing. When Josué and Cindy come off those roofs, and when many others like them come off the roofs and return homes back to their homeowners, they get hugs of gratitude. Our work is to turn those momentary connections into long-lasting friendships, and to follow those friendships, facilitate new relationships, so that we can eventually build social cohesion in America. We as social movements often like to win, but we don't take responsibility for building relationships along the way. The biggest disaster we have today, the biggest one in need of repair, is our democracy. And what we're doing town by town is building a new basis of civic fabric in the United States, a new basis of relationship between immigrant workers and often the homeowners who, right before the hurricane, thought of immigrants as the enemy. We're transforming not just lives, but those relationships between those very different people. So I'm so excited to be scaling this up with my incredible team and with the help of the McNulty Foundation. And my invitation to you is, come join us. Come join us. You know, disasters are openings for very profound levels of change. Just think about a time in your own life where you've either had a flooded basement or a family member with a health issue. What happened then? You decided to look really deeply at your priorities. You decided to change your life. That's what's happening across America. Millions of people who are going through the worst periods of their lives are coming out with more room for relationships and priorities they never held before. So come help us build with us not just a resilient America, but a better democracy. Thank you. Sorry.
The hug. For our next winner, for revolutionizing Haitian education and training a new wave of community change agents to proudly lead a new Haiti, Najine Paul Deroli and Jean-Claude Brizard, the founders of Anseye Pou Ayiti. Let's watch the video.
The world's first Black Republic was the result of world history's only successful slave revolt. That country decided to make sure that education would be deemed a human right. That nation is Haiti. But fast forward to the 20th century, that is not the lived reality. Students cross that threshold of the classroom door and they're being told to strip off their identity. That is what we want to disrupt. Collective action is what it took for us to be free in 1804. On our flag is l'union fait la force. Unity makes strength. If you think about the classroom as a microcosm of the society we seek, we need to start at the foundation of this work.
Pa gen pi bon plaisir que ça, le enseignement mieux capable de développer une communauté modèle.
By rooting ourselves in the power of Haitian culture and community, we can redefine true leadership that help communities thrive. We're having a chance to introduce the world to a different narrative that is Haiti. My earliest memories being in Haiti, I was just so eager to follow my sister and my brother to school. Growing up, my mother and my father instilled a deep pride of what it looked like to be Haitian and to carry that proudly. Lo and behold, our culture and our customs have been expelled from the classroom long ago. Teaching is taking place in French as opposed to the mother tongue of Haitian Creole that all kids understand. That is what we refer to as de-Haitianization. Only 30% of Haitian children will complete primary school, and only 1% will reach university. Only about 20% of teachers are formally trained. That was what inspired me to really building a true education system in Haiti. When we work together, that's when you unlock true solutions and systemic change. Jean-Claude Brizard is a mighty educator in his own right. We started to figure out what would be our contribution to Haiti's first genuine, equitable public education system.
Bonjour classe, comment nous est?
Anseye Pou Ayiti is equipping a network to work together and build our nation's first real public education system.
Former enseignants yo et former parents avec directeur d'école yo, on vient comprendre mieux comment il est possible vraiment pour gagner notre système éducatif haïtien. Apprenants yo étaient toujours très motivés et puis un leadership qui est intéressant. Wow, bon bagay classement, nous peut-être nous bravo. Apprenant pral jouer un rôle dans le comité, te gagné un apprenant qui te gagné vision pour le médecin tout, il était responsable tout aspect sanitaire qui te gagné pour sa classe là. Ça te permet que apprenant yo commencer comprendre comment yo capable utile communauté yo par rapport avec comportement a développer dans sa classe là.
Anseye Pou Ayiti invests in that network of Haitian teacher leaders, school leaders, and parent leaders.
Dès que ouais parents leader, c'est pas papa, c'est pas maman seulement petit pa ou. C'est papa, maman petit tout l'autre petit monde qui dans communauté. Pas me kon toujours ap di m'a chercher pour modèle communauté. Même pas dit réellement pour me pral et fouiller tête moi dans problème communauté. Et puis kounya nan pas, me vinn ap impliquer dans problème communauté. Nous ka reprendre bien quand là pour moi s'il vous plaît.
We believe in that ripple effect onto the entire community and the nation. 10 years in, we have 5 communities thriving. That can become a model for all of the communities across the country for all citizens of Haiti. Almost 90% of our students are passing on time and on grade level. Graduates work with the Ministry of Education and start to show what can happen at a national public level of change. We're living in a moment in time where Haiti is back in the headlines. Political turbulence, violence, unrest, that is not the full story.
Anseye Pou Ayiti genye yon vision ki niveau pou al permettre que pays a développer.
Anseye Pou Ayiti has shown what is possible to expand the narrative of mighty Haiti.
So I was born in Haiti of parents who taught me how to fight for social justice. My grandfather was imprisoned by a despot because he dared to use his bully pulpit, that of an orchestra conductor, to fight for justice. I was his pupil. Growing up in Haiti, the narrative I experienced was different than the Western narrative, characterized by misrepresentation historically, by economic exploitation. About 14 years ago, almost in this room, I decided to dedicate my education training to support my beloved Haiti. When I read the histories of my country, I discovered powerful men like Toussaint Louverture, but I know firsthand the power of Haitian women. I see it in my mother, my sister, and Nadine.
Thank you, Jean-Claude. I am a proud daughter of Haiti. I am the descendant of freedom fighters and revolutionaries. And we know that Haiti will shock the world once more with another revolution. This time, one that is anchored in educational justice as a lever towards real liberation. To do so, Anseye Pou Ayiti is equipping a network of Haitian civic leaders. Leaders who know the power of our identity, our culture, our language, our community assets. And leaders who understand that an excellent classroom is a microcosm of a thriving community, and that is a microcosm of a liberated nation. And so at Anseye Pou Ayiti, we want to make sure that at the classroom level, we are re-Haitianizing how teaching and learning takes place. That is how we reclaim our power. And at the community level, we are bringing together thousands of people on a regular basis in a traditional Haitian practice called Kombit, which is collective problem solving, collective solutions. And at the national level, we want to make sure that we are bridging the sectors, education, health, technology, business, agriculture, and making sure that public policy is rooted in equity. Soon to be 50,000 leaders strong, Anseye Pou Ayiti welcomes all who understand that injustice anywhere is a threat to justice everywhere.
So about 230 years ago, we saw how Haiti impacted the world. And what is happening today in Haiti will also impact the world. So in the spirit of Kombit, I invite all of you to join us and help us rebuild our beloved nation. Thank you.
For fueling the climate justice movement by providing visibility, funding, and support to the leaders and organizations from the communities on the front line of environmental degradation. Gloria Walton, and the Solutions Project. And now for the video.
Climate change impacts all of us. But some of us are more impacted than others.
The entire American Southeast are logged at 4 times the rate of the Amazon forest. Flood, 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 more flooding.
We have some of the highest rates of asthma and respiratory diseases, cardiovascular diseases, just the anxiety knowing that there's something right outside your door that you can't do anything about.
Over 3 million people of color are displaced by climate disasters each year, and 100,000 die from air pollution. These are the historically disinvested communities living at the intersections of racism, poverty, and pollution. And that's exactly where we start. Communities on the front lines of environmental degradation have the best solutions out there.
No one is going to come and rescue our communities but us.
Communities are advancing solutions right now. Abandoning justice is not an option. We need to resource those organizations like they've never been resourced before.
The city of Buffalo was built to be a city within a park. As you see, there's trees, and this is very similar to what the Humboldt Parkway was before it was ripped out and turned into the 33 highway. Back in the 50s and 60s, these were thriving Black communities, and now we have a lot of disparate health outcomes. I know that our folks are suffering from asthma. My children are suffering from asthma. We don't live far from here. Communities are suffering, they're struggling financially, and it hasn't been addressed.
I grew up in poverty. I didn't really know that we were poor, I guess because we were just surrounded by so much love, and that love came from our community. So I have a lot of pride in this work as an organizer. I still identify as an organizer, and I come in with a lot of trust because I've seen firsthand what's possible.
This is one of the ones that we're really proud of because it has a solar panel and the metal roof. It is 1/3 cheaper than the market rate apartments.
Wow.
Yeah. The mission of PUSH is to support frontline communities to have sustainable jobs, sustainable homes, and really a healthy community.
The unique thing about the Solutions Project is that they let communities come up with the solutions.
What excites me about community-based solutions is our communities are advancing values that are about interdependence, regeneration, about care. I can't help but to think back on when I was 3 and 4 years old. My grandmother would have me running across the street, giving our neighbors sugar or eggs. These are values that will sustain us in the long haul. At the Solutions Project, we're resourcing over 300 grassroots organizations across the country led by people of color. And we have moved over $50 million to the front lines. We have changed policies. We have transformed the narrative. We have the president saying environmental justice, and more work is to be done.
This can be replicated anywhere in New York State, anywhere in the country, and that's what we hope to see.
We all have a right to breathe clean air, to drink safe drinking water. The only way to achieve a clean energy economy that benefits all of us is for all of us to work together. Ernesto Ciroli said it best with his story about this Italian company that had the bright idea to teach the Zambian people to grow food on their fertile soil. So the Italians arrived with their Italian seeds, and they went to the Zambian valley down by the river, and they planted tomatoes. And for some reason, the locals had zero interest in this amazing training on how to grow tomatoes. And some days, the Italians even had to pay the locals just for them to show up. But they planted these seeds, and of course, in Africa, everything grew beautifully. And when it grew beautifully, they were like, oh my God, this is amazing. And so they said, should you guys come out today? And they went down to the Zambian Valley and they, oh Lord, y'all, I need to do it again. I'm sorry. I got this. All right. So let me have a vulnerable moment with y'all. So I am actually suffering from altitude sickness, and I was hospitalized yesterday and all the things. So I'm trying to be as present as possible, and it's a little bit hard because I'm struggling breathing, so just bear with me. But I love y'all and appreciate this love in the room. Ernestos, oh, bless you. Oh, no. I got to stand, honey. Thank you. Ernesto Ciroli said it best with his story about this Italian company that had the bright idea to teach the Zambian people to grow food on their fertile soil. So the Italians arrived with their Italian seeds, and they went to the Zambian Valley down by the river, and they planted tomatoes. But for some reason, the locals had zero interest in this amazing training on how to grow tomatoes. And so some days, the Italians even had to pay the locals just for them to show up. So soon, the tomatoes were red and ripe and big and juicy, because in Italy, the tomatoes grow to about this size, but in Zambia, they grow to this size. And then guess what happened? Overnight, some 200 hippos came from the river and ate everything. The next morning, the Italians said, oh my God! And the Zambians said, yeah, we know. That's why we don't grow here. And the Italians said, what? Why didn't you tell us? And the Zambian said, you didn't ask. So what does this story that I finally got right have to do? What does this story have to do with climate solutions, Gloria? Well, I'm glad you asked. The answer to the climate crisis is right in front of us, and it starts with community-led climate solutions. We all know that the climate crisis affects all of us, but it does not affect us all in the same way. Think about your neighborhood. Do you wake to shade trees or breathe clean air? Or have a farmer's market to go to during the week or on the weekends? Or do you step outside and taste the smell of diesel fumes from trucks driving daily in your neighborhood? Or do you turn on a faucet or draw a bath and see dark waters before it becomes clear? Black, Indigenous, and other communities of color disproportionately live at the doorsteps of polluting industries and suffer inequities in their day-to-day health, wealth, and safety because of the legacy of structural racism and income inequality exacerbated by the climate crisis. They literally live on the front lines. But frontline communities are not waiting for someone to tell them what seeds to plant. Oh no. They are organizing, building power, and transforming solutions right now, across the country and around the world for that matter. I think of our communities and our grantee partners and the solutions that they're innovating. They're solutions that take the air and transform it into clean drinking water. Affordable green housing with enough rooftop solar to power the entire block. And these are just two of hundreds of climate solutions that we support at the Solutions Project. At the Solutions Project, we find communities that are already advancing climate solutions, and we ask what is needed. And often it's money, bridge building to greater opportunities and even more money, and amplification. We listen, and we take action by fundraising and moving money quickly to the front lines, demonstrating that we trust communities to self-determine. We shine a light on their stories and solutions, amplifying across various platforms of influence to shape the debate, but also create a new center of gravity around these issues. And we connect our partners to various opportunities across the sectors of government, media, philanthropy, and business. So if you are a local resident, a government, business, and you want to transform your neighborhood or multiple neighborhoods across various climate issues and you don't know where to start, that's when you call the Solutions Project. And we're going to connect you to organizations on the ground making it happen right now. So let's not run around planting tomatoes where they're not needed or wanted. Let's instead join forces with our greatest intelligence, our greatest asset to the climate crisis, frontline communities. Because communities know best what they need, and they're advancing climate solutions that benefit all of us right now. Thank you.
How about one more round of applause for the laureates? This next segment is something that we've done the last 3 years that has been a real highlight for me personally, and hopefully interesting for you as well, which is you watch these amazing videos that the foundation puts together, and often you're inspired and think, oh, I can do that too. But behind the scenes, it's very difficult to start these things from nothing and transform them into what they've become. So in the next 15 or 20 minutes, we're going to bring the panelists. You can come back up on stage. And we're going to ask them some questions just to share honestly what's really going on and what's been your leadership journey as you've navigated building these organizations from scratch. So welcome you all back to the stage, and let's enjoy a little dialogue. Okay. Again, congratulations to you all. You all have touched on this briefly in the videos that we've just seen. But I'd love for you to go a little bit deeper in what I would call the origin story. So you all had very good lives working on very interesting things before, and something happened that made you want to switch gears and focus all of your time and energy on this. So Gloria, starting with you, maybe, can you expand a little bit on your origin story for us?
You know, with my origin story, I think I take it back to my formative years with my grandmother. She actually raised me the first 4 years of my life. And I mentioned it in the video, and essentially, I was raised around a lot of love and a lot of care. I'm someone who has a deep love for people and communities, and I understand that the reason that is because I grew up with a lot of love around me. And I mentioned not knowing that I was growing up in poverty. And it was because I was surrounded by values of community, interdependence, collaboration, sharing. My grandmother carpooled, with her neighbors to the church. We used to share food. Now I kind of, in retrospect, remember that stinky kind of pale yellow bucket that was by the kitchen door was essentially, she was composting. And so she was a farmer, and she made sure that we didn't waste things, and she always recycled and repurposed. And so those values really stayed with me throughout my entire career and shaped who I am as an organizer. And growing up in poverty, I have to say, made me passionate about pathways out of it. And that's what led me to organizing. And one of the first lessons that I learned as an organizer is that the problems and conditions that we live with every day are not happenstance, but people are actually in rooms like this or at a table that may have us at the table or not. And often we're not at that table and they're making decisions without us, but about us. And so you can either sit on the side and reap the consequences of those decisions, or you can be an agent of change. And when I was organizing in South Central LA, I chose to be an agent of change alongside those grassroots leaders. And they taught me everything that I know about this work. Thank you for bearing with me, my breathing.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you very much.
So everything goes back to family. So my parents were educators. And when my mom died, that was a promise she made us make. What are you going to give back? So I decided in my Pahar cohort to focus on education in Haiti. It was in this room after the McNulty Prize, we had a session talking about how do you get this thing started. I was then in Chicago. I couldn't leave leading the third largest system in the country to go move to Haiti and do work. The advice was find an amazing leader who you align with and work with that person. And I found, of course, discovered it.
Yeah. And Najeen, I'm going to come to you in just a minute on a different question. Saket, how about you?
Well, I came to the United States as an immigrant when I was 18. I came on a scholarship. My parents were the first parents in the 5,000-year history of Indian civilization to let their kid go to America to study theater. So that was the beginning of my American journey. But after I graduated, I missed an immigration deadline and became undocumented. It was after 9/11, and I became a low-wage laborer, trying to get by. I turned to community organizing for purpose, but also, to be honest, to rail against what I thought was American hypocrisy. I was watching when Hurricane Katrina hit and came down to New Orleans for about 10 days to be a relief worker, and I found that the entire region was being rebuilt by immigrant workers who were often living on labor camps, on company property, often in trailers behind barbed wire fences, often being paid $2 a day if being paid at all. And once again, it seemed to confirm my worst sense of the United States. But I was lucky enough to have a mentor. I sat down with Dr. Vincent Harding, who had been a counselor to Dr. King. And he was this incredible moral philosopher. And most nights when I would rail against America, sit with him, do these long diatribes, his advice would just be, man, you got to get some sleep. But this one thing he said to me changed the course of my life. He said, America is a country that is still being born. And that gave me not just a purpose for that day, but my entire mission statement since then as an organizer. And it set me on the path that I'm still on today.
One other thing you said when we were speaking yesterday, he was living in Chicago very comfortably. You went down to just volunteer at Hurricane Katrina for 10 days. And 10 years later,
I was still there.
You were still there. Why?
I think it was because I was really understanding America and the world through the eyes of the people I was surrounded with. Immigrant workers, but also the renters and homeowners, the residents whose homes they were rebuilding. And even in the rubble, I saw this extraordinary light, this compassion, this connection, this community being built. And they gave me a home in it. And so I stayed.
Yeah, wonderful. Thank you. So that's how you all began. The part that I often find most interesting is in order to succeed, you've got to often swim upstream. You've got to fight conventional wisdom. There are the naysayers telling you, so we've tried this before, this has already been tried and failed, or you'll never succeed, or you can't raise that money. So I'd love for you to talk a little bit about the received conventional wisdom and what it's taken for you to rise above that. And here, Najeen, I'd love for you to start. You mentioned in the video 1804 was a critical period in Haiti's history that seems to have been forgotten.
Absolutely. I would say 1804 was a critical period in world history, especially the Western Hemisphere, because as it's mentioned in the video, for those who don't know, Haiti was the result and became the world's first black republic after the only successful slave revolt, resulting in a republic in world history. And we didn't stop there. I think that's the other piece of our history that often is not told, is we said, if others are not free, we are not free. And so we went on then to invest people and resources in the liberation of 7 other countries in Latin America, right? That's just 2 examples of pieces of Haitian history that go untold. And so I am grateful for people like the novelist Chimamanda, who says there's a danger in a single story. And so that's one of the biggest pieces that we fight upstream, is that one narrative of Haiti. And so I'm grateful that a little bit of my origin story are parents and family who said, that is not the full story. Take some time, dig deep, understand the mighty history of our country, because we have had such influence across world history, and we need that story to be told. And so that's one piece, is how do you tell that story? The other piece that for us is so important is re-Haitianizing the work that's being done in classrooms. And so while we were free in 1804, our education system remains one of the strongest vestiges of the colonial past. And so one of the things we did for 3 to 4 years is we just listened. We went into communities and we said, how are we at our best as a people, right? Forget all of the constraints, forget of all the narratives that sometimes become internalized oppression, but how are we at our best? And what came back to us are the assets that have been stripped from how teaching and learning takes place. And so by design, the education system is creating a people who are detached from what makes us powerful. And so what we said is, how do you reintegrate those assets? Yeah. Because what people know is when Haitians collaborate, we are powerful. Yes. And so they removed collaboration and group work from the school curriculum. They removed our language, they removed our culture, our proverbs, our folk stories. And so we're reintegrating that into what we do. Yeah. And then the other last thing I'll mention about swimming upstream is so much of this work is a response and has to be a response to generational trauma. And so we know we do education and leadership development well, and the results are just transformational. We also have to heal from the trauma, and so I'm grateful that we said, who are the Haitian social workers and psychologists that can help us address the pain, the trauma, and the oppression, and its effects on us over time?
Wow. Can you yeah. We have in the audience participants from all over the world whose education systems have been inherited, whose assets have been stripped, where the forces of globalization have challenged that which makes them unique. Can you just say that one more time for us in your words? How do you reclaim, how do you re-Haitianize education in light of what others might take away from that?
Absolutely. It's to your point, it's the idea of reclaiming what is ours. Yeah. Because the lie we've been told is that what is ours, what is indigenous, is inferior and has no place in the classroom, right? And so what we're saying is, what would it look like to not think that folklore, proverbs, music, dance, culture is fluff? Because what's been happening in Haitian classrooms is that is what accelerates student learning and not only triples their results as academic learners, but is making them proud Haitian citizens and leaders that will shape the next revolution.
Wonderful. Thank you. Okay, Gloria, if I understood the video properly, you go into very difficult environments, you let community leaders say, here's what we need, and then somehow you've managed to donate $50 million to these. And I'm guessing, as a woman who grew up, as you said, grew up poor and with these core values, how the heck have you bucked conventional wisdom and raised the kind of capital you have to transform these communities?
The first thing is believing in your vision. And my vision is all about our people. And I say our people because I feel like all too often we're divided by race. And in the work that I'm doing, I'm always trying to do multiracial organizing and making sure that we are understanding that our plights are connected. So believing in that work, being grounded by the values from my grandmother, my family, the leaders in South Central Los Angeles, is what gives me the courage to go into the lion's den, to speak truth to power. I came into my organization when we had minimal resources and had a really big vision of moving at least $1 billion to frontline communities. And everyone, laughs when you say things like that. And the first thing that I said is, I'm going to move $50 million, and people said, you're not going to do it. So what that required was busting down conventional wisdom and putting relentless energy into talking to every single person I could about this vision that isn't about me. This is a vision that comes from the bottom up. And when you have that conversation, you have to stand in your values, believe in yourself. One story that I'll share, top lines. I went into a conversation, educated a donor, a high net worth individual, about the climate justice movement. And we talked for maybe 8 weeks. And they came back with an offer that I had to say no to. Because the offer not only disrespected my ask, but it disrespected my people and the vision and everything that I stood for. And I knew that it would be a disservice to go back to our communities with this offer. And I bring this up because all too often we think that we have to compromise our values, but that's exactly what you don't compromise. And instead, you negotiate. Now, I got winded when I said no, right? Like I'm sitting up here acting courageous right now. And I'm winded as I am with this altitude sickness because I didn't know if this funder would come back. So as much credit as it was to courageous leadership, I also have to give credit to the funder for coming back. And long story short, I ended up turning a $2 million conversation, money that a funder knew that I needed because we were in the deficit, to a $151 million conversation that wasn't just looking out for my organization, but 5 or 6 other organizations. So that money was shared. And those are the values of movement building and organizing that you must bring into this work. It can't just be about you and creating monuments. We really do have to cultivate movements, and we have to look out for each other.
Thank you. Saket, you ever have to buck conventional wisdom?
You know, conventional wisdom is interesting because it's usually some recent idea that then reaches back and makes it seem like that was always true, right? I think a recent idea that's sort of emerging in America that suddenly got a lot of traction is you can never change people who don't agree with us. Organize the people you agree with, mobilize them, get them really passionate so you can defeat the other side. And in our work, daily, we're bucking that idea. So here's a quick story. In Florida, in a very, very conservative corner of Florida, a hurricane came a few years ago and flattened about 27 counties. A gentleman, an older gentleman in an unincorporated town, hung up a sign that said, "Strangers will be shot." Strangers will be shot. Well, across town, I was embedded with a few hundred workers, and during the week, these workers with our training would go and repair homes. On Sunday, you know, these workers are living in their cars, sleeping on the street, or sleeping in homes they're rebuilding, and there's no church to go to. So we've created church, and church is rebuilding the homes of people who are uninsured, who can't afford it. Workers bring their skills and their tools, and they do this voluntary, free rebuilding, repairing the lives of people, you know, who've lost their homes. So we saw the sign, "Strangers will be shot," and about 100 strangers, all of us, showed up at this gentleman's house and offered to rebuild it. You know, we built that house in one afternoon. That man took that sign down. We made dinner together. We broke bread. And years later, he's still my friend. You know, and we facilitated a continuing relationship between the workers and him. And that's the power, I think, of not just wanting a tactical relationship with people who may disagree with you, but really saying, I will stop at nothing to be your friend.
Dare I say only light can do that? Okay, our time has been shortened a little bit, so rapid fire last question. Key leadership lesson that you've learned that you'd like to share with this group? And let us, why don't we go ahead and start, Jean-Claude, with you.
Sure. You know, everything I've done in education in the U.S. has been colored by my experience working with Najee in Haiti. The idea of collective effort, and I have folks in the team, in the audience here who work with me, will tell you it's my obsession, that we have to redefine success, and we have to bring people together, and context really matters.
Thank you. Najee?
For me, it's had the importance of language. So you all know we lead with Haitian Creole. It's our mother tongue. People have given us feedback. Why do you post even on social media in Creole and then translate in English? It's because that's our identity. That's what we lead with. That is our power. But even more than that, it's choosing words wisely. Understanding that who we name as leaders shouldn't be about the credentials or about whether or not they're literate, whether or not they came from certain glossy universities, right? Redefining how we define leadership and being very careful even about the words like poor or labels that we put on people, because all of that matters, especially in the work that we're doing to be future forward.
Thank you. Saket, how about you?
You know, one thing that's helpful to remember is that even on the worst day of someone's life, in the worst circumstances they've ever been in, people are driven by a need to connect to purpose, to be bigger than themselves, and being proximate with people in their bad times and continually connecting them with purpose, that builds something real. That's, I think, really part of practicing leadership.
Yeah. You said something yesterday. You used to think that what drew people together was a common enemy.
Yeah, you know, that was a really good theory, and it got me very far in my 20s. You know, aligning people around a common enemy, I really knew how to do that very well. Yeah. And then all these hurricanes and floods and fires came, and I would go places, and I would see these extraordinary openings. In one Louisiana town, we had 400 workers who hadn't been paid in some weeks. They were essentially on a wildcat strike, you know, ready to burn down the buildings they had helped repair. They were hungry, they were beaten, they were tired. And it turned out that, you know, they were working on a project, and all the way up that project, there was a company. And I got into a discussion with the CEO, and you know, I came in ready for a fight. Well, that CEO turned out to be ready to partner. We solved the problem of those workers, but for the last few years, we've been working to change the market incentives in the industry. We've, as a result, raised wages from minimum wage to $25 to $27 an hour in some states. And, you know, I'm proud to say it's not just that. He's also, again, my friend. We've become very close friends. And I think that's the power that comes when you decide there's another way. There's got to be another way than aligning people around an enemy. And I think that other way is aligning people around a common purpose, solving your opponent's problem.
Thank you. And Gloria.
So I had a completely different answer originally, but I have to be really present with what is. And that is that I can't breathe right now, and I've been delirious since yesterday. So the lesson for me, which is one of the biggest lessons, and I was just talking to Nikki and my wife and others about this, is one, being okay being vulnerable, and most importantly, being okay saying that you may need a little help.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And so yesterday, when I was at Anne's home, and I was like, oh my God, I cannot breathe, and it was getting worse and worse and worse. And first I'm like, no, you push through, and for people who know me, this is not normal. So when I tell you I'm feeling vulnerable, I'm feeling exposed, like it's extraordinarily uncomfortable, but this is the call of leadership. And this is, I have to say, like maybe a first, like super not good day for me. But I was able to reach out and say, hey, I can't breathe. And when I tell you everyone swarmed to help me, even though I was uncomfortable, to go in your home and to get oxygen, to get tea, and ultimately had to go to the hospital. April, I don't know, there you are. The love that you extended and the care was so uncomfortable. And I had to check myself because that's exactly how I love to show up for other people. But when people had to show up that way for me, I couldn't handle it. And I kept saying, thank you, thank you, thank you the whole time. And April was saying, stop thanking us. And I felt so bad. I said, I have to thank you because I feel bad that you have to take care of me. So the lesson is, as we know as organizers, that we shouldn't ask people to do things that we can't do ourselves. And I'm someone who gives and gives and gives and loves to take care of people and do things for people. And the biggest lesson I have gotten in my life during this trip is being okay letting people take care of me and saying that I need some help.
Thank you. Thank you, and thank you all for your insights and sharing your stories with us in such an honest and real way. I just want to share a couple of reflections. This idea of community, both the communities you're serving, but really the way you're serving is you're listening. No tomatoes near hippos, right? You're listening and letting that lead. And what you just said, the importance of this community to support the work we're doing. We're running marathons, and none of us can do this on our own. Nope. We're all standing on the shoulders of others and leaning on each other. And we, as the last reading said, we have an obligation to show up, not just for others, but to show up and say, I need help. And you've really modeled that well today. I can't help but, we had up on stage a few years ago here, Brian Stevenson. And as I listened to all of your stories, I'm reminded of his 4 principles. If you want to stop injustice, he says you have to do 4 things. And you 4 are living these. And just for the group to remind you, getting proximate to the pain. All of you lead by being close and listening. 2, change the narratives that sustain injustice. And as one of our fellows in the globalization seminar in Singapore said, actually, it's not change the narratives, it's complete the narratives. Because those narratives need to be finished. 3rd, be willing to do uncomfortable things, all of which you are doing. And 4, stay hopeful. I think you embody the spirit of that, and I think you're an inspiration to us all. Thank you very much.